It's really great to have everybody here tonight. I just have one first question. Is there anybody here from the IRS? Can you raise your hand, please? Yeah. No. Okay. Great. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, we have one in the back. Okay. Thank you. So I just want to thank everybody. My name is Kerry Reddington. I'm a business owner here in Frankfurt, living here since 33 years. I'm also in the city council here in Frankfurt for the foreign council, so we take care of the issues that deal with foreigners. And this subject of U.S. taxation reporting has caused me a lot of difficulties. And every American I speak to, I hear the same issue from them. And it broke my heart. I spoke to a man with having coffee, and he said he's thinking about giving up his U.S. passport. And it really broke my heart, actually, because that's why I came up with the title, Is the U.S. Passport Becoming a Liability? And in some cases, it is for people, that people are really thinking about giving up their U.S. passport, and this cannot happen. We're going to start out with some remarks. It's going to go about 90 minutes. We have a lot of time for questions and answers. This subject, of course, with taxation can go on for hours and hours and hours. Why I did this is I wanted, Solomon Yu has been now traveling through Europe, speaking to AmChams, the different American associations. And for me, it was most important when I told Solomon, I want it for all Americans. I don't want it for them or them or them. I want to open it up to everybody. And that's why it's very interesting to see so many Americans I've never even met before. It's like, one lady walked in and said, wow, I haven't been around this many Americans in a long time. And I feel the same way too. And it's really, really nice. And our first opening remarks is from David Noer. He's Vice President of the AmCham. And David, can you say a few remarks, please?
Yeah, as Kerry said, my name's David Noer. I'm here representing today AmCham. We're very, very happy that we could be here to co-host this event. As Kerry said, this is certainly one of the most bipartisan things that you can come up with in a world that often is not bipartisan. And so it's great to be here. Solomon, thanks to you for your tireless efforts on this for all of us here, all of us Americans. Kerry, thank you for putting this together. You know, Kerry was talking about tax issues. I just came from my U.S. tax advisor a half an hour ago, and I was quite frustrated. So this is perfect timing for me. Thank you all for being here.
All right, and our special guest right now is Solomon Yu, and I met him actually in Washington not too long ago, and he's been really working hard for us, trying to help us, and I really appreciate you. This is his third city. He started in London. He then went to Paris. And we're going to show him a beautiful time in Frankfurt. And I welcome you, Solomon. Take it over.
Thank you.
Wait, sorry about that, Solomon. I don't do this all the time, so that's why I'm an amateur at this, actually. So I wanted also, was interesting for me to have a couple people just give a little bit of their stories about what's happening with them. And I have Jim McGoldrick. Jim, you say a couple words?
Kerry, I think you did that on purpose. So even though we have more than 5 people tonight, we can still do cigars and whiskey tonight at my place if you want, okay? My name's Jim McGoldrick. I'm an American citizen, only an American citizen. I've lived in Germany now for 35 years. So I have a lot of experience with the topics we're going to discuss tonight. I guess, Kerry, thanks very much, first of all, for organizing this thing. I think it's very, very topical. As David mentioned, I just got my draft tax return on Friday last week, so I got the same issues as you coming up the next week. If I had to summarize everything just very, very briefly, if I look at our countrymen in the United States and what they have to deal with and compare it to what we as Americans overseas have to deal with, I've got to say we've got some serious disadvantages in a number of areas. And 4 areas come to mind off the top of my head, and I think they're dear to my heart and to the hearts of many of you out there. First topic, obviously, is taxation. We do have to file, as Americans, overseas U.S. tax returns. Now, the United States is one of the only countries in the world, I think there are only 2 countries in the world that actually require their citizens to declare their income globally and tax them globally, irrespective of where they live and work. This is one of my favorite questions. So does anybody know the second country that does that to their overseas citizens? Eritrea, yes, Eritrea. If anybody doesn't know where that is, it's a small country, northeast coast of Africa, sandwiched between Senegal and Ethiopia, 5 million people. I don't think I'm going to be there very often, but they do the same thing to their citizens that the Americans do. So we do have to file a tax return each and every year, which is a very, very arduous undertaking, given the fact that we have to file our tax returns locally in the country in which we reside. So for most of that would be Germany. And for the like of me, I just don't understand why the Americans do that, because, you know, bottom line, I don't believe it generates a lot of marginal tax revenue. That's probably for 3 reasons. Most of the countries that expatriates live and work in, they have double taxation treaties with the United States. Most of these countries are high tax rate countries. Look at Europe, you know, Germany, France, Italy, UK, all have marginal tax rate much higher than the United States. And then a third point would be that the first 100,000 or 102,000 in the meantime of foreign income is tax exempt anyway. So net, and when you factor in the cost of processing all these tax returns coming in from all over the world, you know, I can't believe the IRS makes, or the Treasury makes very much money on this. So, you know, I think that's something you need to get a handle on going forward, Solomon. When you do your lobbying, you do your initiatives, you know, Americans react very, very concretely to numbers. Americans don't like to do things for free. So if we can, you know, show the IRS that net, this is not a big revenue item, I think your arguments are going to be much, much stronger. So anyway, we have to file at least one tax return for the United States, one in Germany, and some of you have to file actually in other countries too if you do a lot of business traveling. Second issue, this whole FATCA issue is a huge burden to Americans overseas. That came into place in 2010, and that was intended to target Americans who were hiding money overseas. Americans living in America, sending money to Swiss banks, to Luxembourg banks, to Cayman Islands, Bahamas, whatever, not declaring where the income came from and not taxing the income in the first place. So they set a dragnet worldwide, and, you know, tax evasion is a bad thing, and I'm totally in favor of countries going after tax evaders. You know, that's Germans do that. All the developed countries do that in some form or another. But the fact is, it's impacted us much more severely here as expatriates, as Americans overseas, as it impacted Americans back in the States, which is not a fair situation. You know, we have to declare the high balances of all our financial accounts, whether it's a bank account, a brokerage account, cash value of life insurance, each year the high balances. And, you know, they were actually intending to go after the Americans living in the States, hiding money overseas. And we have to do this administrative burden each and every year. And I think the bottom line there is, and that's something that, you know, I just realized doing this after 2 or 3 years, is that as time goes on and as we report these balances each and every year, the IRS and Treasury in the United States knows much more about our financial position as Americans overseas than they know about the Americans back home. So, you know, try that one out. I think that's quite unfair. The third area that we get absolutely hammered on is just day-to-day dealing with banks. You know, I know how it is here in Europe. We've all heard the horror stories of banks not allowing Americans to open up bank accounts, or banks actually requesting Americans to close accounts that they've had. This is, you know, forced closures. This is an issue that's come to be just by the fact that servicing these American bank accounts for, you know, institutions worldwide and in Europe here in particular, it's become very, very onerous, very, very arduous. They've got so much regulatory reporting, compliance, paperwork involved that these accounts make no sense for them to service. So, you know, as we feel impacted and disappointed and angry about the situation, these banks are doing it for a reason. And the other reason is they're so afraid to make mistakes after paying billions of dollars in fines and LIBOR fines and subprime fines that they're afraid to make mistakes and incur penalties. So, you know, we are persona non grata as far as many, many banks are concerned. You know, they avoid us like the plague, which is very, very frustrating. So if you do have a good banking relationship, hang on to it, do whatever you can to keep them happy, because I don't see that getting better over the short to medium term. And the fourth area that I think impacts us very, very heavily versus our compatriots back in the States is the whole area of investing. As an overseas American, you don't have the wide variety of financial instruments to invest in as you would have if you'd be living in the United States. You're routinely excluded from partaking in initial public offerings, IPOs. You can't buy equity funds. You can't do derivatives, options. You can't do packaged products. Even simple things and mainstream investment items such as ETFs, electronically traded funds, exchange-traded funds. That's bread and butter business in the States. Americans buy those all the time. They're low cost, they're efficient, they're liquid, and it allows you to buy equity exposure into markets without having to pick stocks. You can buy exposure to China, to Russia, South America, Asia, whatever. And these belong in everybody's portfolio these days, either directly or through a brokerage or a bank that you do business with. But here in Europe, as an American overseas, the European banks don't allow you to either buy the ETFs that they issue, or even worse, they actually ask you to liquidate the ETFs because they cannot service them anymore in terms of paperwork involved. So I just had an experience recently where Deutsche Bank asked me to close or sell some ETFs or transfer out some ETFs that were Deutsche Bank ETFs in a Deutsche Bank account that I'd had for like 8 or 10 years, and they just could not handle these anymore. So they said, can you please sell them or transfer them somewhere else? So I called Goldman Sachs in London, and they happily took my ETFs, but what a nightmare. And I was actually asked recently to close. Now this is like, I can go on forever on these things. It's such an emotional thing for me. But I was actually asked recently by an American bank in the USA if I could kindly close an account that I had, and I've had this account for 35 years. I think I opened it when I just started working. It's an IRA account, and I don't know what was in it. Maybe $150,000, $200,000 or something like that. And this bank came up with the idea that we do not want to service Americans anymore who are not living in the United States. So I, living in Germany, had to close this account because I didn't meet their minimum balance of $500,000. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. So long story short, we do have these handicaps. We have to file 2 tax returns. We have to deal with FACTA. We have to deal with banks who don't want to do our business. We don't have the investment alternatives that you would have in the United States. And, I find myself asking myself, quite often, does this really make sense? Is this hassle really worthwhile? Does the value of my U.S. citizenship still offset all the costs, all the time, all the effort involved? And I've got to say, I can still answer that question as a yes, probably because I'm older and I've experienced dealing with all this stuff, and I'm an ex-banker and I have training in accounting and all that stuff, but this does not apply to the average American overseas, and certainly not to a lot of people in this room. So I plod along and do it and hope things get better. But as Carrie mentioned, there are Americans out there, and I'm thinking about my children who are getting older now and starting to go out into the workforce. They're going to deal with all these issues going forward, the same issues that I just highlighted, and that's a nightmare. And while I stay in the system, and I'm happy to be an American, and I don't think I'm going to give up my citizenship, if my kids are coming out of college these days and going out and working and earning their first money, come to me and say, does this make sense at all? They have to deal with this for 30, 40, 50 years in the future. I have a hard time to answer that question positively. So anyway, long story short, those are my issues. Those are some of the issues you're going to talk on tonight. And I'm delighted that Carrie's organized this event this evening, that you have a chance to speak to us and talk about all the good things you're doing to mitigate some of the problems that I just mentioned. Okay?
By the way, we do have bankers here in the house, but they do not want to be revealed, actually, they told me, yeah. So I won't call you guys out here, actually. So, and we also have somebody here from the U.S. Consulate. Thank you for coming also, Martin. Our next sad story is Kevin Jackson. And I would like to, completely different type of story. And he's what is we call an accidental American. And in tax terms, he's called accidental American. So let me give you quotes to Kevin. Kevin, keep it really short, that we can get on to the main thing.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kevin Jackson. I was born in Germany by a U.S. dad, and I'm a dual national. I do have both passports, and until this day, I haven't filed any tax. Never. Why? Because I never took care of it, was never bothered with it. I did my German tax, and that's it. Americans never wrote me a letter or so and said, Mr. Jackson, get to the consulate and take care of it, or anything. So I didn't take care of it. But now, like, if you watch the political situation, maybe I'm like a target right now, and someone wants to kick me out of my own passport, which I would think is really bad. I listened to you, what you talked about the bank products. There's another fact, the life insurance. People my age have to take care of their own on life insurance to have a retirement in centuries in the future, because otherwise they won't have a federal one. And then if I would file the tax, probably I would lose my contracts I already signed and paying for month per month. And then I didn't have any good idea of how investing my money to have a good retirement then. So this is causing a real problem for me in my future. And what I'm looking forward is to meet other Americans, because I think the Americans are not that much represented as other cultures in Germany, which should change, hopefully, like Turkish and, I don't know, Chinese, whatever cultures. They're very known here. They reorganize themselves in every city, but we don't. And I ask myself, why is that? We still have military members. Probably we have a bunch of military members here, retirees or stuff. And what I'm looking for is how finding a way if we can reorganize ourselves, maybe some short near future, and looking to make good contacts this evening. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for, that's honesty to say, hey, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much, Kevin. So that was two sad stories. I mean, everybody can give their own story here in the room, but there's a lot of retired people I've seen in the room also that have also issues. I didn't think about, somebody told me about the how do you say it, Lebensversicherung? Life insurance. It's also a big problem that people can't get that either. So, Solomon, I'll give you the floor. Keep it short to the space, and then we have enough time for
Q&A.
Q&A. Thank you, Solomon.
And thank you for coming. And also thank you, Chamber, sponsored this event, and Jim, and talk about those 4 issues, and I try to address all of them. And one thing for sure, you can't, in one bill, which is territorial taxation for individual Americans, to cover everything. But this is the first step, and more help. We will do more additional bills to address each individual issues in the long run. Yes?
I'm sorry, could you just introduce yourself? I don't know which
Oh.
organization you work for.
Okay. My name is Solomon Yu. I wear 2 hats. I'm Republicans Overseas Vice Chairman and CEO. And I am also Republican National Committeeman representing state of Oregon on the National Committee. All right, let's talk about how I got into overseas issues. I was born in Communist China, escaped, and got a green card and citizenship. So my American passport really represents freedom to me. And if you start reading the articles right after FATCA passage, you realize an increasing numbers of overseas Americans renounce their citizenship. Now, in my book, we really got a problem. Somewhere they can get their bank account open and refinance their mortgages. And in one case, the gentleman said right here, Major Roger Johnson, one of our 7 plaintiffs for FATCA lawsuit, okay? He transferred everything he owned, including house and bank accounts, to his Czech wife's name. Now, for somebody, fall for us, wear uniform for us, and I had to do this. You realize FATCA really is a tyranny for overseas Americans. So we sue IRS for 8 constitutional violations. Guess what government lawyer did? They challenged our standing. Standing defines us. You have to get an ugly letter from IRS. Claim, if you don't do X, Y, Z, we will seize your assets and we will fine you. Without that, you don't have standing, okay? They don't recognize banks closing your account, refuse to renew your mortgages, okay? They refuse to recognize that. Unfortunately, Sixth Circuit agreed with government lawyer, and we took the case to U.S. Supreme Court. U.S. Supreme Court decided not to hear the case. So during that process, we realized the root cause of all you experienced really is citizenship-based taxation. So what are we going to do about it? Last year, we had a Congressman George Holding on the Finance Committee, House Ways Means Committee, and Senator Hiller on the Senate side, Senate Finance Committee, each hold a bill for us, introduce territorial taxation for individual Americans, just like territorial taxation for corporations. But we were at a disadvantage. Corporate America, through American chambers of commerce worldwide, had spent over millions dollars to lobby both sides for 10 years. So they got their TTFC, territorial taxation for corporations. Meanwhile, overseas American entrepreneurs holding the bag, called transition tax, right? So facing this kind of situation, actually, both Congressman George Holding and Chairman Kevin Brady realized. I think Congressman Holding actually gave 5 minutes talk on the House floor and addressed the issue. We need to come back and take care overseas Americans. And we use that, we see that as a rain check. So December we went back. We start all over. The reason we didn't get our TTFI last tax reform 1.0 is that when a huge bill go through the House 1 week, then went through the Senate 1 week so fast, JCT stands for the Joint Committee on Taxation, did not have the time to score it. Without score and no debate, and you can't even introduce the concept of TTFI. Okay, so I met with Chairman Brady and to talk about the need to help you guys. So meanwhile, we got a call from American Chambers of Commerce overseas. Very interesting, especially in Asia. The situation in Asia go like this. Let's talk about mix of American Chamber of Commerce in Asia. Probably you have 40% multinationals as member. Then you have 60% small pop mom shops owners. Those are American entrepreneurs overseas, 60%. Now guess what? They all pay that chamber membership, all that. The big boys got not only territorial taxation, but also tax cut. Meanwhile, those American entrepreneurs got nothing, absolutely nothing. So that's one of the problems we are facing. And second problem we're facing, obviously, they all have to deal with FATCA, FBAR, and a violation of your privacy rights, and can't get account renewed, or opened, or mortgage renewed, all that. So one of the issues we try to put this bill together and called territorial taxation for overseas individual Americans. And we want to learn something. We don't want to repeat the same mistake as last tax reform 1.0, and especially on the transition tax side. So let me describe what you're going to see from 10,000 feet level, okay? What you're going to see is that a real simple concept. You will not pay tax on your foreign earned or source income. You are not going to file for tax returns when you are TTFI qualified as non-resident taxpayers, okay? However, you have to be 3 years in tax compliance. Meanwhile, if you still have U.S. source and earned income, you need to pay tax on that. So the idea is you pay tax locally where you make your money. And to simplify all that, on top of that, let's talk about FATCA issue. One of the FATCA issue really is banks. Now, FATCA itself has a requirement. Any earning above 50K, they're supposed to report you, right? But banks decided it's easier, keep costs down, compliance costs down. We'll report everyone, or we kick American clients out, either way. And so in this bill, there is so-called self-certification process. Once a year, you check off the box. Under penalty of perjury, you claim you are still a overseas American and TTFI qualified non-resident taxpayer. You have no tax obligation to U.S. government and COSAM. You have no need to file tax return. So the idea of that self-certification is that you will be able to go to your bank and tell your bank, we no longer subject to FATCA reporting because there is no way I can cheat on my income tax. I don't pay income tax. I don't file tax return. Another very, very important feature is go back to many of you guys said. One of our plaintiffs for FATCA lawsuit is another veteran, and gentleman named Daniel Cuttle. Daniel Cuttle served military and then went to Switzerland as IT person. And he had a every 3 year renewal mortgage. Got a letter from Swiss bank, said, since you are American citizen, we are not going to renew your mortgage. So he renounced. And after he renounced, he got his mortgage renewed. And no, actually he's off the hook. But he said, I really want to do something for my fellow Americans. Make sure, and they are not going to go through what I just did. So he's joined us as one of our 7 plaintiffs for the FATCA lawsuit. Then he has a kid, 12 years old, and Swiss government offer a kiddie account. Basically, you can save for your college. And the kid could not open her account all by herself. So the father had to sign the account jointly. That will suck him back in and report to IRS on FATCA and FBAR, and his mortgage will be in jeopardy again, okay? So he said, I couldn't do it. Guess what? His kid didn't want to renounce her citizenship either. So I made a promise. I said, look, if we're going to do this territorial taxation for individual Americans, we will have a clause. When overseas American teenager turn 18, they will be automatically qualified for TTFI. So they don't have to go through what Daniel went through. Okay, so when I make that presentation in Canada, and many in the audience raised hands, said, you know, you really should call this one is U.S. Citizenship Savings Act. But I already passed that to House Ways Means Committee. Yes?
I have another suggestion for you. Those of us who work here, but our income comes from everywhere. I'm a journalist. I actually make I make money that comes from the United States. I make money that comes from Canada. I make money that comes from Europe. So I'm in a complete, I mean, the idea of you have to be taxed on where you live, it is not necessarily where you work. You could stay in one place, but your income can come from globally.
Can we address that question during Q&A? Because I want to talk about his issue and how we solve his problem for him. Okay? Now, you all heard. Most accidental Americans and dual citizens, they don't even know they have to file for tax return. Probably they don't owe anything because they're in high tax jurisdiction. But the problem is they never file for anything. So right now, they're getting ugly letters too from their banks, not IRS. Basically facing account closure and can't renew a mortgage, all those kind of stuff. So one way for them to get out of this is renounce their citizenships. But the problem with renunciation is that 1, 5 years tax compliance. Then with FATCA penalties, FBAR penalties, you have to pay voucher industry to prepare 5 years compliance. Then renunciation fee, $2,350. On top of that, exit tax, immediately due. So when we talked to House Ways Means Committee, and I told them that here's the problem. They got caught in the middle of this. They don't even realize they need to file for tax return in your case. And we got to find a way for them to be in compliance. So when the bill is done, there will be requirement 3 years tax compliance for you without FATCA penalty and without FBAR. So that way you can choose or elect TTFI as well. Then if you got only foreign source income, then you don't have to file for tax returns and pay no IRS taxes. That's the bottom line.
Can you just explain what you mean by 3 years tax compliance?
Yes, I will. 3 years tax compliance is take last 3 years, okay? Let's say this fall we pass TTFI. Let's make January 1, 2018 is the effective day, right? So your last 3 years tax compliance will be 2018 year, 2017 year, 2016 year. You don't have to wait. Your CPA can help you. Now, I have a friend, John Richardson, who is immigration citizenship lawyer in Canada, also tax expert. And he registered as independent. By the way, one thing I want to talk about is TTFI really is bipartisan issue, okay? It's an American overseas issue, not Republican issue, not Democrat issue, and not independent issue, okay? So he's the independent. But without him, we would not be able to participate in this kind of negotiation, this kind of discussion, because his knowledge on tax side as well as on immigration side, citizenship side, and renunciation side. And when I was in Canada, he introduced me to 3 American CPAs, okay? And I couldn't believe how much they charge, because some of the people already told me for this kind of 3 years compliance, they already looking into in Europe would cost them 4,500 euro to be in compliance, 3 years compliance. And guess what? Those CPAs in Canada can do for 1,500 Canadian dollars, okay? So that's real important to realize this. So he is willing to offer when the bill, after the bill passed. The last thing is very, very important. Go back to transition tax of the last bill, right? Last tax reform bill. There is a transition tax. And our bill, the TTFI bill, will connect with TTFC. The reason that connection is going to set ourselves up for the next bill, we will be able to address the transition tax itself. A couple things we already have done on transition tax for the corporation side. One, we already asked for extension. There are actually 2 extensions granted by the IRS. One extension, the first extension, 60 days from April 15th, 2018 to June 15th, 2018. The second extension is very interesting extension. Your cash and your retained earning combined about 10 million. And you don't have to pay your first installment until June 15th, 2019. And without penalty, okay? So why? Because that buys us enough time to get a TTFI through, then turn around, focus on the transition tax side. And another thing we ask is the definition, obviously. What qualify as a small business? And I sit down with Treasury and I have that discussion. Actually, if you remember, the transition tax is actually go back all the way to 1986 for the retained earnings. And the qualification of small business is that anything, again, the same number, below 10 million. Retained earning below 10 million back all the way to 1986. The last one we have in mind is when we offer the next bill to fix the transition tax, we would ask for rich active. Very important, because otherwise there will be a gap. So we want the bill to be rich active January 1, 2018. So the bottom line is tax reform like this. It will take time, but help definitely is on the way. And another thing is we don't give up, because truly this is fighting for your civil rights. No question about that, since you have been treated as second-class citizens. Now let's open for Q&A.
Just one, okay. I don't even need one. Carrie asked me, hi, my name is Rick Wilhelm, another American who's been 30 years in Germany. Carrie asked me to moderate the Q&A to save Solomon's voice here for a few minutes. So without further ado, we've got a microphone out there. There was one lady had raised a question earlier. Is she still here? She left, okay. Who wants to go first? I see.
I'll ask a question. This TTA?
TTFI, right? TTFI, right?
Doesn't I don't know who is affected by that situation and who isn't. But like, for example, in my case, I I do have to file a tax return in the United States because I earn income in the United States, but I still have, the initial discussions mentioned all sorts of liabilities faced by Americans living overseas that aren't a part of this thing that's been specifically discussed by the last speaker.
Okay, TTFI. Basically, you pay tax locally where you make your money, as simple as that. Then if you have US income, you still have to pay tax to Uncle Sam for your US income. If you only have foreign income, doesn't matter which country, London, you said, or Berlin, right, Germany. And you only pay German authority and UK authority tax. That's the concept. Now,
but for example, I'm not able to, not being able to invest in, like the earlier speaker discussed, not being able to invest in mutual funds, banks rejecting me as a customer because I'm an American. There's all sorts of other things that for some of us, I don't know if I'm speaking for whom, but are much more significant concern and are not even affected by the specific thing that you're discussing. Why?
okay, let's take FATCA as an issue. Actually, I addressed that. There is a self-certification process. Every year, you have to check the box, declare you are still overseas American, TTFI qualify, and you don't pay U.S. tax because you don't have U.S. source income, and you don't file U.S. tax return for that reason. And that self-certification is under penalty of perjury. Now, with that as a first step, you can take to your bank, said, if FATCA reporting is for the purpose of tax evasion, there is no way I can evade tax, right? Because you don't owe anything, you don't pay anything, you don't file return. So that's a first step. Then, bank should be interested to help as well. The reason is its compliance costs will be reduced, okay? Then if that's not solving the problem, we will go back to Congress, enact another legislation on that. Now,
I think to his specific question,
Right,
it's more around the fact that he has U.S. source income.
You have to pay tax.
Everything you're talking about doesn't help me one bit. I mean, but it may
If-
help other people, and that's good. And I'm not against any of that. But
If you have U.S. source income,
my concerns are not the concerns you're discussing.
okay, if you have U.S. source income, you're going to pay Uncle Sam tax, period.
But that's fine. But there's other negative consequences that I face that are very frustrating and unfair that have nothing to do with whether I file a tax return in the United States or not.
This bill is not going to be panacea, solve all the problems, but will be a first step, right?
Okay, well, yeah, it's
Okay.
certainly not a bad thing.
Okay, this gentleman here with,
Could you pass?
what's that? And then we'll come to you in the middle there, okay?
Right, so my name is David Hart, and I've been living in Germany for 30 years. And personally, I don't have a problem with reporting my income, FBAR and all that. It's not a painless process, but I've got used to it and I've been doing it, okay? What I do have a problem is that the discrimination that German banks have been having against U.S. citizens. The thing is that recently Commerzbank canceled my business. I'm a business owner here. They canceled my depot with them because of my citizenship. And so where is the U.S. government, the ambassador, lobbying to get equal treatment of American citizens here in Germany? Can't the U.S. government lobby the Swiss banks, the German government, to force them not to discriminate against U.S. citizens living abroad?
Actually, I can't even get a U.S. judge in circuit court to say it's wrong. FATCA cause foreign banks to discriminate against U.S. citizens abroad.
No, but I'm just saying, like, for example, Commerzbank, they have a big operation in the U.S. Deutsche Bank has a big operation in the U.S. Why can't the U.S. government lobby these banks and tell them if you want to do business in the U.S., you have to treat U.S. citizens equally abroad. I don't understand that. Why? Is the AmCham lobbying on this topic, or is the ambassador talking to the German banks? I mean, that's the thing. I would say that would be an issue. That
is the issue we recognize. But think about TTFI is a end run on FATCA. And that will solve your issue. Okay. The reason is very complicated. How many people know how we force other governments to sign FATCA through intergovernmental agreements?
You sign, you don't do business in America.
Well, actually, they use dollar clearance authority as a threat. Okay, that means when I took my lawyer, Jim Bob, and Senator Rand Paul did a 4 European city FATCA finding tour. And during FATCA facts finding tour, we talked to Swiss Private Bankers Association and Swiss Bankers Association. They got 2 bankers, 150 banks. Okay, and entire economy is based on that. They were told, okay, by U.S. Treasury Department, if you don't sign ITAs and you don't sign FATCA, what we're going to do is take away your dollar clearance authority. Without that authority, your bank will go under, and then entire Swiss economy will go under. That's how they play the game. So it's not something right now you can undo all this. You can do one piece at a time, get there. And as a matter of fact, we could even have a lawsuit after TTFI passed, and you're still not getting service, even though you are TTFI qualified, right? So let's wait, see how this one is going to play out. I see a hand, not you, but I see a hand over there. This gentleman.
The gentleman was speaking about the American ambassador. The ambassador's function is purely political. The organization that causes all this trouble is the IRS and the Treasury. That's how I see it.
Okay, I have good news for you, actually. We got somewhere in the Treasury, okay? What happened was I approached this administration and request for, we did a FATCA hearing on one hand in the House. We also request for Treasury review of FATCA regulations. And actually review was very, very in our favor. One, they didn't collect any money. If you remember, FATCA passed as revenue enhancement as part of Hire Act, job creation. Sounds real good. But as an enhancement, and JCT projected $800 million a year for 10 years. They didn't collect that from the report, okay, from Treasury. The second thing they did was they said, we spent $86 million. But the problem is compliance issue. The data we collected, because banks sent everything from somebody got an account, maybe $500 in there, they're still getting information, okay? So it was information overload, garbage in and garbage out. That's a problem.
Gentleman with the beige shirt in the middle, you had your hand up earlier, yes?
My name is Van Hassler. I'm a retiree here in Germany. Lived here for 30 years. An American citizen, and I thought I was doing my kids a favor when I registered them as American when they were born. However, in the last couple of years since they've started working, I realized maybe that wasn't such a good idea because they've fallen into the same trap as the young gentleman who spoke earlier. Mm-hmm. So for those, I would like to say thank you for doing this. I hope it works, and I will be very pleased if it does work. As far as the banks are concerned, that really is an extreme issue. My sister, particularly in England, she was whipped from bank to bank with direct refusals and near insults. before she eventually found somebody who was small enough not to do business in the United States. And that really is an extreme problem. And it also hangs together with the mortgage thing together. And without pressure well, I should say not pressure, that is the problem. The banks are under such pressure from the American government that they need relief from that. We need relief from that pressure, which is being exerted to catch the few bandits that are running around here selling drugs. And it's, it seems to me that there's just for the few. I don't suppose there's any drug dealers here, are there? But they're not going to oblige anyway. They're not going to oblige or apply or live by this FATCA or report anything. So the whole thing is really just a witch hunt, and we just happen to be the witches. It's ridiculous. So thank you very much, and keep up the work. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The gentleman in the fourth row here in the middle, you, sir.
About your bill that you're introducing. It has been introduced, is that correct?
Not yet.
When do you anticipate introducing it?
This fall.
Could we here in Germany receive a copy of the wording?
When the draft is done, right now let me talk about two things. The answer is yes, but there is a delay due to our negotiation on PIFIC side of, okay? And in Washington, D.C., there is a mentality we don't want wealthy Americans stateside to game the system and to move money overseas, then declare TTFI qualified. And because of that, first thing was the investment under PIFIC. And so we have to argue with them. Let's say you're working for a bank, and in the country government, local government mandate, you put a percentage of your paycheck into a retirement vehicle, and your employer also do the same. So you would have a retirement account, and that should be exempt. They all agree. Okay, JCT and the Ways Means Committee, everybody agree. When you got that far, you take to the next phase. You say, okay, how about Americans? Right now, they are expats. So you do a prior bill enactment. Those guys should be all exempt. And new expats, because your concern is those wealthy individual will take advantage of the bill, right? So new expats will be considered as U.S. person. We ran into resistance. They didn't like that because they don't want to discriminate one group, existing expats, over the new expats. So last proposal we put on the table is that exempt Americans overseas invest in foreign mutual funds. Very important because you guys use that as a vehicle for retirement, but wealthy Americans stateside, they want to control their return as well on their earnings, and they will not invest in foreign mutual funds. So that's the language have been working on right now. Then JCT has scored that, so that's a delay. And because of that delay, we pull ourselves out of tax reform 2.0. We're not part of a tax reform 2.0 anymore.
Who's next? You again, sir?
Hi. First, I don't want to appear unthankful. It sounds like your efforts are really helping a lot of people, and try to make it fast. Second of all, I think I concede that a lot of these issues with trying to influence the banking policies overseas is very complicated. There are antiquated U.S. laws that prevent U.S. citizens living abroad from buying mutual funds in the United States. I mean, this is, I mean, to me, that seems ridiculous. I mean, and that's a completely U.S. circumstance. That has nothing to do with foreign policy or anything. Why, and that seems like it would be a considerably easier issue to address. Anyway.
Well, the problem is you have an opportunity to fix the root cause, okay, of all evil, which is citizenship-based taxation. Do you know how old that law is? Anybody wants to guess here? 154-year-old. Okay? And so what you try to do is you take down citizenship-based taxation. Then you take a look at the pieces around. It have been built, all the bad laws on top of citizenship-based taxation. FATCA is one, and investment in mutual funds another one, and all those rules, regulations, and laws, bad ones. Then once you take the main structure down, then you take a look. What are you going to do with those bad laws? Actually, is much easier. You take the support, the base, down first.
Gentleman here in the middle. Yep. You, sir. Yep.
Hi, name's Alex Kreindler. Could you talk a little bit more about the assumptions behind the citizenship-based taxation and how you could fundamentally attack that? I mean, what are the pros and cons of having that in the first place? And I mean, is there an argument to be made that the actual benefit that the government derives in terms of tax receipts is actually less than all this trouble that's being caused?
Okay, you want me to talk about the benefits of citizenship-based taxation?
I just
Am I right?
You said the approach would be to attack this fundamental approach of citizenship-based taxation. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about how you would do that.
Our approach is take down this 154 years old law called citizenship-based taxation.
Right. What are the main arguments for and against that when it comes to that discussion?
Okay. One, all U.S. citizens have been double taxed. That's very, very important reason to take it down. And you pay tax twice to local government as well as U.S. government. And rest of civilized world, they only pay residency-based taxation, right? Only one time. And second thing is, because of that law, you have been treated as second-class citizen because they add a FATCA to this, other things to this, right? Other laws, other regulations. And third thing is America competitiveness. Now, that's how I sold to this White House, okay? And before President Trump was a nominee, and I sit the campaign management down and told them that we would like to ride on your coattail because candidate Trump was talking about territorial taxation for corporations to bring money home and to create jobs, right? Those multinational profit parked overseas, home to create jobs. And we would like to do the same thing based on the same theory for individual Americans. Now, how many people know American companies in general have to pay a 40% premium to hire Americans working overseas? Show of hand. Okay. What happens is when you have double taxation, citizenship-based taxation, okay, and American companies actually pay extra to American employees working overseas to compensate double taxation. Because of that, we're not very competitive. And American company realize I can hire a Canadian speaking English, okay, in managerial position, cheaper. Then you add a FATCA difficulty, other difficulty there, right? So what happened is now suddenly we have no Americans working overseas. Good example is Michael DeSambre, my partner, worldwide president of Republicans Overseas, lawyer in Hong Kong, sent from New York. 20 years ago, in his New York law firm office, 20 partners, guess how many Americans? American partners out of 20, 18. Today, 45 partners, guess how many Americans? 2. Okay? So when you look at this, the argument kicks in very, very fast, which is when you have more Americans working overseas in managerial positions, they more likely use American-made goods and services. When that happens, you have job growth in export sector in the States. The same argument, just like TTFC, right? Territorial taxation for corporations. But this time is about American companies' overseas competitiveness. And in return, job creation at home. And when you have this kind of job growth, you also create more revenue for government. So it's a win-win-win all the way around.
This one was up
Yeah,
first.
this one never asked.
My name's Martin Vaughn. I'm a Foreign Service Officer at the U.S. Consulate here in Frankfurt, Germany.
Nice meeting you.
I thought I should weigh in, particularly because just to David's question about what is the U.S. government doing for its citizens overseas. My goal as a Foreign Service Officer is to serve Americans, whether they're living in the United States or whether they're living overseas. One of my jobs, it so happens, at the consulate is that I handle renunciations for people. And this is not the first time that I'm hearing, the concerns that you all are raising about the nightmares that you face in the banking sector. And I understand that those problems are very real because I deal with them every day as I'm helping U.S. citizens to give up their citizenship. So what can we do to help? I mean, one of our jobs, obviously, is to implement U.S. policy. Okay, FATCA is U.S. law and it's U.S. policy. But one of the things that we can do is we can relay these problems and these concerns back to policymakers in Washington so that they hopefully understand a little better the extent of that. And I've done that. I've done that through unofficial and official channels. And some of myself and other colleagues in the Foreign Service continue to do that. The other thing is that we can, as David's suggesting, we can go directly to the banks and we can talk about, raise these concerns with them and try to make sure that our citizens are getting equal treatment. I know that our economic section in the consulate had a session in July with the banks in which they discussed, among other things, qualified intermediaries and how that whole system is supposed to work. So I think part of their goal is to make FATCA work by explaining to the banks what they need to do to implement it so that we can enforce the U.S. law. But that doesn't prevent us from also making sure or doing our best to make sure that our citizens are getting a fair shake. And so that's what I hope to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is, the bill that you wish to introduce, and the support that you will need from Americans overseas. Now, for my part, I consider myself relatively well informed. This is the first time I've ever heard about a bill being introduced to support us. And what can we do from our side to support you? What works is writing letters to congressmen. What works is writing letters to senators. I would also like to know, as an overseas American, I am no longer registered in any state to vote. Where and how can I vote overseas and thereby have my vote cast a little bit of weight in favor of your bill, because that works. If you say, I, Mr. Yu, I represent 350,000 votes of Americans overseas who are all in favor of this bill, that gives you far more clout than to say, I represent overseas Republicans. They say, I represent overseas Americans. Look at the signatures I've collected. Look at the meetings I have held. Look at the people who are in favor of this. You need strong backing in back of you. Communicating our concerns and problems, that's fine. But what helps is votes.
Absolutely.
That's what helps. And that's what I'm asking. How can we help you, give you some more clout?
Let me answer that first. Yes, right to congressmen, right to senators. As a matter of fact, right now the bill is being drafted by House Legislative Council Office. And pretty soon we're going to, Congressman George Holding is the chief sponsor. We're going to reach out to Democrat side and looking for co-sponsorship as well. And again, it's a bipartisan approach to this. And then we will develop a target list for the senators as well for the House members. Go ahead.
I only wanted to address the gentleman behind me in reference to how do you vote abroad. I don't really think I need that, okay? I can only say that it depends on your party, okay? I'm with my party, which is Democrats. So if you have any Democrats in here, you go to www.democratsabroad.org and you can learn how to vote. We'll help you. We will assist you.
The young lady in the middle here, she's got her hand up.
My name is Anneke Mees. I've been living in Germany for 30 years, and I am tax compliant. I have 2 kids who are starting to work and earn income, and I'm seriously telling them to get rid of their American citizenship because of all the problems that it has caused me over the years. My question to you builds on the question that the gentleman 2 rows in front of me asked. What is your timing on this? I recognize that you have a very difficult job trying to convince other people and other politicians of what they should do for people like me and like many here with me. I have no idea of your business as a politician, so I don't understand, and I have no inkling of what kind of timing range I should be thinking about.
Timing range
so
is...
What are we talking about? Are we talking about years, months, weeks?
Next 4 months. Okay? Next 4 months. And, okay. What I'm going to tell you is how we conduct this process on your behalf. What we call prosecute 5 Ps. Life has no... We don't have guarantee in life. Okay, so that said, and we can only prosecute 5 Ps. First P really is get a philosophy right. Double taxation is wrong, and treat you guys as second-class citizens is wrong, and all those issues is modern days civil rights issue for you guys. Okay, you got a philosophy right. Then next P is called what kind of vehicle. P is take a look what kind of vehicle we can use and get us from point A to point B. So really is a policy, what kind of policy we can do, all right? So in this case, guess what? TTFI replace CBT, citizenship-based taxation. That's the policy vehicle we can use. The next P is politics. When you talk about politics, you talk about maneuvering, beat each other up, okay? Like Washington, D.C. is doing, okay? Or bipartisanship. As you can see, we do bipartisanship. One more P is that you have to make sure that persuasion. In London, I told them, Lady Thatcher said, in order to get anything done, you have to win the argument first. And we are winning the argument right now, right, on your behalf. The last one, persistence. You don't give up, and you keep fighting. So that's all I can tell you right now. Nothing is guaranteed, but looks pretty good.
Okay, we've got time
Thank
for
you.
one, maybe two more questions. Young lady back here, on this side.
Hi, Chrissy Rolfe. I've been here in Germany for 10 years. I used to work at the consulate. I'm a former disabled lady veteran, which you don't hear from anymore. And what can you do for me? I come from Portland, Oregon.
What can I do for you?
Yeah, what can you do for me?
Free
I
you
come
from
Portland,
tax
Oregon.
liability.
Okay, right now I'm an English teacher, so yeah, I don't make $1 million. I have no Swiss bank account. Trust me, not as a teacher. You can't in Germany. So what can you do for me?
When we pass, I assume all your income is from this country.
It's from Germany,
Right.
yep.
When we pass that bill, you don't have to file tax return.
Ever again.
Ever again. You don't have to pay tax on top of it. You don't have to pay your CPA. That's what I can do for you.
Okay.
Gentleman here in the corner.
Yeah, I'm done. Just a quick note on voting and where you can vote. You basically vote in the last state you were registered in. I have lived in California since 1971, and I still vote. I'm still registered in California. They send me ballots to wherever I'm living in the world. So you registered at your last state you were registered in, that's where you vote.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Solomon.
Wow. This could go on for hours and days, and yeah, but I must say thank you for the consulate being here. The consulate has quite often for voter registration on the website, VVA, or is it FVAP is the website, and all the information is very simple, so get out and vote. It's very important. And Pat, of course, from the Democrats Abroad will be waiting outside, taking all your business cards. They need it, as you know. They're trying to win, so they need it. Hey, listen, we have some time to mingle here. Yeah, Pat's going to go outside. I set up extra for a table for her because I love this lady, okay? So, yeah, I love this lady. So she set up a table outside. She'll take all your questions and has all the formulas to sign up. And Solomon, I want to thank you very much, everything that you're doing for everybody. It's a very complicated issue. You know, I'm in the local government here in Frankfurt, and it is very difficult. You know, if you walk on the river, and you see those toilets, those porta potties on the river. Actually, you can thank me for those. And to get these porta potties done it took a long time. And yeah, it's you know, even to get them nicely done, it was the issues we had to go with them, and you know. But as Solomon said, it's the persistence, togetherness, and when we are together, we can achieve something. Only when we're together, because we're a very small community, the Americans here. And that's why I see so many Americans I've never seen before. And it's very beautiful to see us all together, because as everybody's coming out of the nook and crannies, I mean, there's people, I saw one guy coming from Gießen, he didn't know what American football was anymore. He thought, you know, he's been here so long, coming from Gießen, he thought, you know, not you, Thomas, not you, another American guy. You know, he thought, you know, everything's a round ball. So that's why maybe we do more of these types of things that really affect us, that we talk together, that we really work together on these issues. We still have some food left over. Martin, thank you very much for that. Where's Martin Driscoll? He's probably walking his dog. Yeah. You know, everybody's in the same boat. That's why so we can all open up, talk about it honestly. And thank you, Christy, for coming from the Teachers Association. It's very nice. And everybody enjoyed themselves. And thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.